continually expanding and getting cheaper.
Whoa.
So, yeah, good. I'm glad you learned a new fact. But so as far as them, and if you look at the general trend, now in my view there are government interventions that get in the way, but certainly if you look at the average cost of resources that we have now versus 100 years ago, it's a completely different universe. It's way, way cheaper. So why, I'm curious, does anyone have any ideas why have resources gotten cheaper if we're, why the more we consume, the more we have?
It's because you're exploiting.
Well, I'm waiting for raised hands.
I did raise my hand.
But I didn't call on you.
You didn't call on me because you think I'm going to say something that contradicts what you're saying.
I'm terrified of your genius. Okay, let's go.
I'm not saying you're terrified of me. Thank you for acknowledging me. Like right now, something very local to Wisconsin, we just bought the Pinocchio mine, which is something like people want cheap iron ore.
Mhm.
This would poison the indigenous communities. It would completely ruin our environment so that people that are totally removed from the situation can have cheap resources and can use them to build things like rebar and other countries that are trying to industrialize.
So how does that answer the question?
No, but I'm saying like that's why the reason is because the stuff that we're using that's easy to get to is all used up. So now they're using stuff that's harder to get to, which essentially uses more energy and displaces more people. And you don't have to see it because a lot of us are super privileged right now. I'm betting you've never worked in a mine. I'm betting you've never been to. Have you ever worked in an oil rig, or have you ever worked in an iron mine? Have you ever done any of those things? Or coal mine?
No.
I don't think you have. So do you really know what that's like? And have you seen it firsthand? And do you like personally know from like?
Okay, I was trying to get an answer to the question, which.
That is an answer.
No, okay, I got that. Okay, so that's one view is that. What were you gonna say?
Well, as you started at the top, you talked about mechanization and bigger and bigger machines being able to do things more and more cheaper and more efficiently. And that's the answer, is we're able to take 700 workers to a mine that used to take thousands and get the same amount of ore at harder to access for cheap, because we have that mechanization and we can take our energy and manipulate it in ways that allow us to do it cheaper. And we also outsource people that can do that somewhere else even cheaper. And then somewhere else even cheaper as we take advantage of these indigenous populations.
So do you think it'll be? Do you think that's going to come crashing to a halt then?
There's eventually going to be a wall where we can't get cheap labor anymore, and then it's going to keep the price. And that's
Yeah.
the price is gonna
Okay, good. So that's one more, and then.
Well, I just want to add this, if possible, I would like to ask you a question, more specific. But generally, why it's cheaper because you've already laid groundwork and you already have infrastructure from what you were doing before, where you can build on. For the rest of the board and getting things. Like the oil, you've got that out of the easy stuff, and now you have the oil powering factories, machines on the road, you can use those to keep going further. And that's kind of progression technology, rebuilding what we have, and all those steps that the next ones we use to meet here.
Yeah. So I think all of those.
A little more philosophical.
No, I get it. So all of those are definitely parts of it. So there is a phenomenon of the ability to go after more difficult things using more technology than the general proliferation of technology. The way I think it's helpful to look at it is this. The way we're taught to think of resources is what's called the given view, or I like to call it the given view of resources. So Mother Nature gives us a certain pile of resources, and then what we do is we take them and then we're using them and then we're depleting them. So if we use them too quickly, we're hosing future generations. That's the kind of standard view of resources. And as I said, this contradicts the historical record so far, and the usual claim is to say, okay, well, so far, yeah, resources have kept increasing, but it's got to run into a wall at some point. And if you read the literature on this, they said that 10 years ago, 150 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 200, there's always this wall, and it's always this moving target. And the reason it's this moving target is because it's an invalid theory. It completely misunderstands what a resource is and how resources work. So there is an unlimited human capacity to create resources. So the proper view is that resources are created. And the way to get to this is think about coal. Is coal a natural resource? No. Now, coal is the thing that has been fundamental to China and India expanding recently. It started the whole Industrial Revolution. But before human beings had the ingenuity to figure out how to find it and to use it, it was just a bunch of useless black rock. It took human ingenuity to make it a resource. Oil was regarded as completely useless. Oil used to be a nuisance that got in the way when people were looking for salt water underground. oil is not naturally a resource. It took human ingenuity to make it a resource, and I'll get to you in a second, and then to find more. I get the.
Coal's not useless, so
Okay, so let's and if we look at the progression, it gets even more amazing, because you get to then with uranium and nuclear power, you get this completely obscure rock, which turns out to have 1 million times the energy density, the amount of energy per unit of volume and mass, as oil. So what's happening historically is we're not running out of resources, we're running into resources. But it's because a resource is a service rendered by raw materials that is made valuable by the human mind. That's the key. So all the world is just a bunch of matter and energy. Now, if you, like in this bottle, this bottle, probably the energy in the water of it probably contains enough energy in the mass of this bottle and the water that wasn't it before I drank it, contains enough energy to probably power 1/4 of the vehicles of the US in a day. Because of the equation E equals mc squared, there's so much energy in nature. So the whole thing that's limiting us is our ingenuity. And the thing that's limiting the ingenuity, the number one thing, is the green movement. Because what it prevents is individuals from taking ideas and putting them into action. Because it says, no, you want to make that nuclear power plant? No, you can't, because we deem it unsafe. Okay, it has a safety record of anything, well, we still are against it. And what that does is that completely stunts the newest frontiers of production. So as many resources as we have now, we would have way more if it weren't for the anti-industrial movement, aka the green movement. So, I mean, just in terms of the opposition of nuclear energy, you can see really the essence of the green, because it's taking this effectively unlimited resource and it's denying that such a thing is possible on the one hand, and then politically it is doing everything possible to gut it on the other. If you look at how much a nuclear power plant costs, usually with most technologies in their infancy, they go from expensive to cheap. Nuclear went from relatively cheap to expensive purely as a matter of government regulation. And this was all because of hysteria by people who are against technology. And again, it became particularly clear they were against technology once CO2 became a concern, and they remained vehemently against nuclear power. But also, really, the key with resources is the ultimate resource, as Julian Simon said, is the mind. It's just resources are just what the mind produces from otherwise useless raw materials. So in the story of resources, human ingenuity is the hero, and nature is just the background.
Do you have any science to back up what you're saying at all? Like, where are you drawing any of what you're saying from? You're not citing anybody, you don't have any resources?
E equals mc
Oh,
squared.
it goes on to square again.
All right, guys, I'm going to have to ask for a little bit of politeness. Yes, I think everything I said is consistent with science, and it's certainly consistent with economic history. But if you have a question, if you don't understand the scientific aspect of something I said, you can feel free to ask it. But I don't, to just say, if I say a whole thing and you say you're wrong about everything, I don't know what to say.
I'm asking you to qualify what you're saying. I'm asking you to qualify what you're saying.
But everything I said is observable by having a crude knowledge of economic history.
If you wrote a paper, you would be asked to cite sources.
You have to cite sources.
You're a journalist, aren't you? Don't you have to cite sources?
You have to cite uranium, and then what do you do with the nuclear?
Okay, so this is, questions are not, I tried to address what I thought was the interesting aspect of the question, which is the resources. So, next. Yes? Oh yeah, sorry, you had a question, I forgot.
Oh yeah, you said that coal was useless, but we actually need coal to filter our water leaking and
That's
Mhm.
why it's in the science.
Other minerals can fill that hole too, doesn't have to be coal.
For sure, but like when you dig it, well, actually.
Right, so this is why I mean, I don't know how many times I can come here in the future, but just in general, if you're going to come to a talk and ask questions, you might come to the talk, because this was an issue covered of the issue of when you have a technological, so there's this whole fallacy of you have this amazing thing and you completely try to define it by the negative. You say, oh, it has this problem. So we got coal. So think about this. Coal was the #1 thing that really doubled the human life expectancy. If you look at the literature back at the time of what coal did for human life, for one thing, it made it possible for England's population to not only have an increased life expectancy, but to triple. Okay, so this is the key benefit in human life. And so to look at that and say, oh, it was filtering the water, let's throw it's now it can't in this particular aquifer, let's throw it out, is an anti-technology mentality. The pro-technology mentality is to say, are there other places we can get coal? Are there other minerals, as he said, that we can filter the water from? But notice the focus here. This is for those who were at the talk, I think this is a good illustration of how sort of bad ideas get in the culture, is because you have a group of people who are very righteous about their ideal and continually look at the existing society as this is evil, this is evil, this is evil. And what they're comparing it to is not any achievement or thing they've created or system that has actually worked or has any evidence of working. They're comparing it to a fantasy world. A world without electricity that somehow works wonderfully. And that is a really, a really corrupt thing about our society now, where we don't value nearly enough the things that make our life amazing. We're a bunch of spoiled brats because we have the best life anyone has ever had. And we completely take it for granted, and we attack all of the industries and the systems that make it possible. And we, go in a room made possible by capitalism and say, "Oh, capitalism's evil. Feudalism's better." I mean, it's really in a sense, I don't blame certain people because the educational system is horrible, and most people don't self-educate. But it is a serious problem.